Mr Cleverly, it's good to see you this morning. We had a discussion last week about the fact that I'd heard that there might be a U-turn on corporation tax. You said that putting up corporation tax would be anti-growth, and within 24 hours, we understood that corporation tax was going up. I mean, do you feel like you're in a difficult position about the kind of promises and guarantees the government can make at the moment?
Well, of course, I would much prefer that we didn't have to make changes in the way that we did. I'd much prefer if we were able to bring corporation tax down and use that as a stimulant to growth. But we've also got to recognise that, as the Prime Minister did when she had that interview with Chris Mason, that when you put things in place and they don't have the desired effect, and particularly the market reaction showed us that they weren't having the desired effect, that you don't just stick with it in the face of that. You make the changes that you need to make. Ultimately, we are still looking to pursue a growth agenda for the UK. That is still the right thing to do. We are still looking to protect people from the massive potential rise in energy prices that we would have seen had we not put those protections in place. But we also recognise that we do need to do things in a different way to make sure that we get the market stability that underpins so much of people's lives, those interest rates.
Yeah. So I approach with some trepidation the question of whether the triple lock will still apply to pensions. Liz Truss said that she was committed to the triple lock, which is putting up pensions in line with either 2.5% or in line with earnings or in line with inflation, whichever is the higher. We know this morning inflation would be the higher, 10.1%. Can you guarantee that pensions will go up in line with inflation?
Well, look, that is a manifesto commitment. We take manifesto commitments very seriously, but ultimately announcements about that kind of thing are for the Chancellor to make, and he's going to be making a statement on our medium-term plans in just over a week's time. And I think the right thing for me to do, the appropriate thing for me to do, is to not to speculate or attempt to pre-announce the things that he'll be making in that statement. But he will be giving clarity and certainty soon. And I know that that is what so many people want. When they see inflation going up, they see interest rates going up, they want to know where they stand so they can make the kind of plans in their household budgets that we all have to do. And we totally get that, but that will be coming pretty soon.
Well, many people see him, our new Chancellor, as the de facto Prime Minister, don't they? I mean, you could argue that he's not, but that's how a lot of people see him. And that's because your Prime Minister has simply lost people's trust. She made an unequivocal pledge last night that defence spending would get to 3%. But she's made so many unequivocal pledges, which 24 hours later she has had to reverse. Do you accept that the Prime Minister now has an irreversible credibility problem? We just can't trust what she says.
Well, look, we saw the Prime Minister say that she had made mistakes and she was sorry about that. I think that's the right thing for her to do, the right thing for her to say. What she's also said is we are going to prioritise the protection of people that need to be protected from the economic impact that are affecting not just the UK but countries around the world. The reaction, the market reaction of that announcement was not what we had hoped or expected, and therefore we had to respond to that. But ultimately, what we are absolutely committed to do is to protect the people that need protecting from what is going to be a tough winter economically for the UK and the globe as a whole.
All right.
Also try and get ahead of some of those things that are causing those problems, where we get our energy from, the wholesale energy prices, resolving the war in Ukraine and various other things that are putting pressure on us all.
Yes.
And we are going to do so in a responsible manner. Obviously, the Chancellor is the person that is in charge of the UK's finance policy. That's always been the case. At the moment, so much is focused around finances, of course, that a lot of the focus is on him and his department. But I've still got a really important job to do in terms of our standing internationally and the work that we're doing to support the Ukrainians and others as well.
Yes, of course you do. Look, can we just analyse that word you used there and that the Prime Minister used, and you were quoting it, mistakes? I mean, the thing is, there are mistakes and there are mistakes, aren't there? I mean, to use a driving analogy, it's a mistake to back into a lamppost or clip the curb or have a fender bender in a car park. It's also a mistake to spin off the motorway at 100 miles an hour and flip the car. So there are relative mistakes, and surely the mistakes that the Prime Minister have made are terminal in terms of her career. For example, she's not very good at presenting herself. How do you think she'll manage at Prime Minister's questions today?
Well, the Prime Minister's questions that she's done thus far, I think she's actually demonstrated that she's very much on top of her brief, and she is very comfortable at the dispatch box. Predictions of her demise at the dispatch box.
Mr. Cleverly, she didn't even appear the other day when Sir Keir Starmer called an urgent. She didn't appear. She sent Penny Mordaunt. Penny Mordaunt had to explain that the Prime Minister was not hiding under a desk. And then when Jeremy Hunt stood up, he had to dismantle Trussonomics piece by piece as the Prime Minister, the person you say is comfortable at the dispatch box and on top of their brief, sat there like a chastised school child next to him without saying a word. I mean, do you believe what you're saying?
So, as I said, if you look back at the footage of the previous PMQs, you will see that the Prime Minister is very comfortable at the dispatch box. The reason she wasn't at the UQ, by convention, the Prime Minister, she will have had important things in her diary. That is the natural and normal way of doing things, and it's very, very common for the Leader of the House.
Though,
I know, but we are trying to get back to normality, and that is why the Chancellor will be setting out his plans, the government's plans, for ensuring that we get the economic stability which underpins all of our lives. The Prime Minister has said that mistakes that were made, that she made mistakes, that we made mistakes. And, of course, Richard, the point you make is when you're in government, all the decisions you make, all the decisions we make are serious and significant decisions. The easy decisions don't come to ministers. So everything we do is meaningful, it's important,
yes,
and it's difficult.
That, of course. Yes,
and when we get it wrong, when we get it wrong,
yeah,
it's really important we recognise we've got it wrong, and we set about quickly to put it right. That's what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are doing, and it's right that they do.
Well, of course, just to finish with, she did have the opportunity on Friday at her press conference to make a difference, and it was a disaster. So one can only, well, we'll have to see what happens at 12 o'clock. But you certainly are a man who bats well on a sticky wicket.